Yeah, oh, without a doubt. It's not like he's going to his local lake and catching that. If I know James right, James has probably got somebody else on his boat that's handing him the fish to hold them, if I know him right.
Yeah, I think you're right. I
And
think
now,
you're
if it's
right.
carp or catfish, I'm pretty sure James can catch those. I have seen him with corn on a hook before, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure about fishing worms and stuff. So, all right, we'll leave him alone for now. So, everybody, I'd like to introduce Chris Lane, who is a Bassmaster Classic champion, as well as what I believe 6 Bassmaster tournament wins.
7 total with the Classic. Yes, sir.
Excellent, excellent. I see you've got one behind you actually already. Which trophy is that one?
That one is the Sabine River from the beginning of this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is a pretty
Actually,
trophy.
on the drop dead crawl right there. Got a new little thing actually I'm going to try for the Classic, and that's drop dead crawl on the pig and jig. It seems to be working on Gunnersville, so we'll see what happens.
Well, I tell you what, we'll start right on that. What I'm going to say before we jump in is anybody that's got questions, if you look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little chat button and a Q&A. What we're going to try to do is the webinar is probably going to go about 30 to 45 minutes. Anytime you've got questions, go ahead and, whether it's questions on what Chris has mentioned or questions you have on your own, go ahead and type that in the chat box, and I'm going to try to answer, or I'll refer back to Chris with your questions, and we'll get back to you on some answers. So, Chris, you mentioned lures that you figure you're going to try at the Classic. What kind of arsenal are you looking to bring to the Classic? What lures are you thinking might be the ticket?
Well, first of all, this is a Lucky Strike jig football head with the new live motion drop dead crawl on it. It's actually what I won the Sabine River on. Got a lot of fish on this bait, and it's actually what the Classic was won on back in 2013 by Cliff Pace. So definitely going to have maybe 2 of those tied on because, just from different sizes, and it's proven to catch fish. And then if it's really, really cold, then of course I got the old Con Man. It's just a stick finesse worm, real small, and just put it on a shaky head. And, not so sure you're going to catch the giant fish on this, but it might give you those 2 to 3 pounders that, hey, you know what, gives you a little bit more comfort to be able to throw, the big jig to try to get that bigger bite. And of course, the Lucky Strike jerk bait. So many fish caught on this, so many big fish caught on this bait, especially in the Classic, from 2013. Just getting that consistent bite 3 days in a row, I think is going to be key. So these are probably 3 of my main arsenals, that'll be thrown on Grand Lake of the Cherokees.
So you're thinking they're primarily going to be on a pre-spawn then, kind of moving up?
Yeah, I think so. Depending on what El Nino does, it's coming out of the south, and we've had a fairly warm winter, but I've had snow the last 2 days here in Gunnersville, so it's pretty cold here. But in generally speaking, the water's gotten cold enough for them to be in pre-spawn mode to where if it does warm up quickly, then they're going to be coming full speed ahead to the bank.
Yeah, because Gunnersville's not that far from Atlanta. I got quite a few friends in Atlanta. It's like the world's going to end. There's 3 inches of snow, so.
Exactly.
Glad I don't live there anymore. So, you mentioned as far as, using with pre-spawn, is there any particular structure or any areas you think might be, more key for you to fish than others?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's where my Ray Marine electronics come in along with Navionics mapping, because when you're, graphing or looking or going down a ledge and you see that ledge start to taper up, that's kind of a transition, for those fish. It's kind of like a funnel where they can funnel as long as there's going to be a pocket or a spawning flat that's behind it. That's where those fish are going to kind of ease up through and ease back there. So, structured's got to be a hard bottom for the most part. And I think that, when you're looking at that stuff and when you're going and it's 58 degrees and you see fish sitting out there in 10 foot of water, come tournament time, that water is going to be 62 degrees. They're not there anymore. You're going to know where they went. So I think that'll be a big factor. But, I still think beginning of March, probably going to be a little cold for spawning fish, but you just, weather will predict that more than anything.
Now, are you one of those guys that likes to run as far away as he possibly can for the boat ramp? Or are you one of those guys who are going to go, it's too damn cold, I'm going to sit right here where everybody released fish last week?
Well, that's the problem, trying to defend the title in 2013 there was I did make that long run. I was running all the way, and everybody knows I didn't catch a fish the first day. And the second day, you're exactly right. It was too damn cold. I didn't want to run all the way down there again, so I stayed and fished some of the stuff that I had there close and caught a good bag. So you'll probably stay, just make that decision come Classic Day.
Now, how much, you mentioned defending the title. How much pressure is that? I mean, was that a lot of pressure when you rolled into the Classic on, man, I got to defend my title, or was it more fun poke and jab, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was, I was never one, and I've had that question asked a couple of times, and I really thought I was never that guy to let the pressure bother you. I mean, I always try to, keep what's in front of me and let the things I can control, try to, focus on them. That Classic was so much pressure. And I think it was because it was so cold, when we were taking off and not being used to it that much yet. But I think one of the biggest things was, going out there for that first hour or two, not getting a bite. And then everything starts rolling, Has there ever been a champ to go out and zero in the next tournament? Has there ever been, a Classic champ to do this? So all the pressure, all the media, everything going into it, it did affect me, and I did let it affect me. And I look back at Greenville, and, 5 bites I had the first day. That was all that I had. But my mentality was completely different. Hey, go get 5 bites. Get 5 bites. Don't try to catch 25 pounds and defend your title. Just go catch what you can catch and do well. So a lot of pressure off this year going to Grand Lake of the Cherokees.
Yeah, I can only imagine because, obviously the cameras are saying, oh, what's Chris doing and what's that doing? And that's just, I can't even imagine what that's got to do to the psyche, like you said, especially if the first couple hours go by and you're going, damn it, am I throwing the wrong thing, or where'd my fish go? And I think anybody that tournament fishes can understand. Not quite to that degree, but at least, well, why do the fish know it's Saturday and they stop biting? I caught them Thursday, Friday. Saturday they don't eat anymore. They get used to tournaments, so they run away.
Yeah, and that's you get mind boggled, and you throw the pressure of trying to defend your title. It adds up to a little bit. So I've been running a little bit of a cold, if you can hear. So I got a glass of water there. I'm trying to in between breaks, and that light was in my face, and I was trying to put it there. But we're good.
We won't keep you too long. We'll kind of keep it going. I know you got plenty to do. So talk about you mentioned about how you fish, and obviously we talked about the 7 total wins. Talk about some of the keys to your fishing success, Chris. I'm sure there's people on here like, man, I would love to be able to, to be a superstar like Chris and be able to fish the Classic and the elites and everything else. What do you really feel is the keys to your success in through this journey of Bassmaster? Yeah,
well, one of the biggest things is believing in yourself. For the first 2 years of my career, I was having the time of my life. Granted, the first year I didn't make the Classic. The second year I did. And then the next 4 years, I was going into, let me throw this swim bait that I've never thrown in my life because this guy from California killed him on it. Or let me throw this, football jig over here that the guy from, I was still from Florida at the time. So I think that a lot of that I was trying to do what other people did. And going back to my roots, trusting in myself and, believing in myself that hey, you know what, you had to kick it up another level, and the way I was fishing, the way I was practicing was about a 60th place finish performance, I think. And if you look at it, that's about where I'd finish. I'd finish 4 to 5 checks a year, and the other 4 or 5 I would miss. Through a 10-year season or through a 10-tournament season. So, after watching Kevin Van Dam win the Classic on Lay Lake, doing the on-the-water footage and stuff for ESPN, and watching all the other guys, too, the Shaw Grigsby and the Jeff Crete and the guys that were leading that event, they were all in the same area. Dude, there was no way I was competing in trying as hard as they were and doing what, and it really, really opened my eyes of, man, there's a whole nother level, when you fish against the best in the world on the Elite Series. So I think it was, hey, believe in yourself, work harder, work smarter, and you know what? You leave everything on the water. And if you do that, then you have no reason to come back and complain.
And you touched on something actually I always wondered about, and that is, when you're in your home waters and, you're used to fishing in Guntersville and those areas, or even a guy that's, fishing in Florida, man, I do really well on the tournament trail. And you think about, okay, well, Skeet's got, for all intents and purposes, and I don't know how long Skeet's lived on the West Coast. We got Skeet in the West Coast, KVD in Michigan, Ike in the Northeast. How do you go ahead and try to compete against guys? You're fishing all over the country. When you're first getting into it and out in your home waters, it. And obviously fishing in Alabama or fishing in Florida is dramatically different than, fishing the Delaware or fishing Grand. How do you learn those areas? How do you piece all that together?
Well, the one thing that you do is you really take from, you're sitting there looking at your electronics. Ray Marine is what I use. You take your water temperature. You take the time of year. You take the mapping that Navionics does a great job with. You take all of that and you take, the fish and your experience that you put together. And when I drop that boat in the water on a new body of water, or even, say St. Clair or, Erie or California or Okeechobee, I look at those 4 to 5 things right there. How much vegetation's in the water? What's the primary vegetation's going to be that time of year? And then you start weeding through it. You start going through it slowly and changing baits. And what's the forage? And they're feeding on crawfish. Most of the time they are in the winter. So you're throwing a jig or a crawfish, red crankbait, Randy House, Spring Creek Bridge. I mean, all of that stuff. If you look at that and you go back through your experience, I think one of the things is you take all of that and you go out and apply it. And then once you figure out, okay, they're biting on a shad style bait. So you get some shad style baits. They're biting on, okay, shad spawn, rip wrap. Well, then you start running. I mean, you burn 50, 60, 100 gallons of gas running that whole lake. And that's part of that next step that I was kind of getting at, that you got to take. It's not, okay, I caught 3 fish off that bridge. You're not going to win off of that bridge. You've got 15 more bridges on this lake, or 150 more bridges on the lake, and you got to go run every one of them and fish them all and figure out which ones the fish are on, which one they're not. So it's just one of those things where you really got to put it all together. Each time is different, and I use Detroit, this year is a perfect example. Those fish were still up there in Lake Huron, but I knew there was going to be a ton of boats up there. And catching the fish, just a couple miles out from the boat ramp, and, I had a decision to make, and I actually went halfway up the river to catch, I think, 13 or 14 pounds one day, just because I couldn't get these fish down here to bite. But I never went all the way back out to the mouth, and I came back. Now, granted, I only finished third, but third place on the Elite Series, man, with having a really bad start at that event, was a great thing. So it's just, you got to put it all together, and each time can be different.
Now, we're talking a lot about bass, so we'll ask a little off fishing topic. So when you're not bass fishing, or are you always bass fishing, what does Chris Lane like to do besides catch bass?
Oh, man, I love to play golf. I've got 4 kids. None of them are driving yet. So we've got cheerleading and football and gymnastics and church on Wednesday night. Now, I mean, you name it, you go down the list. So it's a full speed of things. But, family time, I try to catch up on that as much as I can when I'm home. But, me and Bobby usually try to get there a day early and play golf on the Elite Series events just to kind of kill the monotony. And, just hanging out, and hunting season's here. Like to hunt a little bit and have fun with that as well. But, as soon as January hits, everything, I should say, as soon as hunting ends, everything gets cleared out, all that stuff gets put away, and it's focused on this right here, fishing.
That's great. 4 kids. That'll definitely keep you running. How old are they?
I got a 4, 9, 12, and 14 who just got his boater's license.
Yeah, you're running all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, but it's good. It's good.
Good for you. Well, we got a few questions, so I'll let you get a glass of water, quick sip there. Let me see what we've got here to start with. Okay, so Christian wants to know, after how many fish do you know it's a good spot and then leave it alone in practice? Is there a certain number you say, okay, caught enough, this is great, moving on?
Yeah, 2.
Two?
If I catch 2 fish there, then, that's pretty much, mark, and then, try to go, look at it, kind of study that area a little bit, and then head on to the next area.
Well, Carl's got one of my favorite topics, which is the old dock talk. How or when do you decide to lean on your strengths as opposed to fishing what you hear is catching them, if it's any different?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, there's a lot of that on the tour. A lot of dock talk, from guys that'll tell you a story to guys that'll actually shoot you the truth. But there again, it goes back to believing in yourself and having confidence in yourself. And one of the biggest things with that is, I go back to Maryland this year, Chesapeake Bay. I never caught a keeper bass in 3 days of practice. And there was all the grass, all the mats. And I thought that I was just going to blast them. And it was not going on. And Bobby, he says, hey, look, man, I had 2 bites doing this, and actually it was by a dock. And I'm going, well, I fished for 3 days and have had no keeper bites. So I think I'll go try that. And I went and I tried that and I got a bite. I didn't set the hook. So I went there in the turn, and that was like at the end of the last day of practice. So I fished every dock. I don't remember if I caught 2 fish or 3 fish that day, but I fished every dock, piling in, because I knew it was going to be one of those tournaments. So, there was a little bit of dock talk, but, you have to believe in yourself and, trust the people that you're around to take that, information that they give you, and whether you believe it or not, whether you go try it or not. If somebody tells me to go throw a Shadowlicious swim bait, a guy from California says, hey, man, they're killing this swim bait, say Skeet Reese or somebody, and I go out there, I have no idea what I'm doing with that thing. You know what I mean? So, do you do that, or do you try to stick with your strengths and, you just kind of put that out? So dock talk, I tend to shy away from it as much as I can. But there are times, when, hey, you need a little pick-me-up here and there.
Actually, you hit one that would be an interesting question is, with your brother fishing the tour as well, obviously, does he do you guys share little hints to help each other, or is it more, big brother, little brother kind of pushing the buttons?
Well, we get that question all the time. And, me and Bobby, it'd be like, you got any brothers?
I do.
Okay, it'd be like you guys doing the exact same thing, and he's sitting on the other side of you doing a webinar with Bobby, and you guys are just sitting face to face. So it's, how long does that work out? So, one thing that I think me and Bobby have learned is, we both have families. We both got to feed our families, and fishing is the way we do it. So, if I don't win, then I want him to win. If I don't do well, I want him to do well, and it's vice versa with him. So what we try to collectively do is I don't think of any time we've ever fished anybody's spot, or pulled up on the guy and, oh, you found these, it's never, me and Bobby have never been like that, because, I'll figure out something over here and he'll figure out something over there, but yet we're doing the same thing, but it's never in the same area. So, yeah, it works to help, because you're competing against, 100 anglers, but more importantly, you're competing against the green thing and under the water that's got a brain. And the more you can figure that out, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I guess I would do the same thing. If my brother's fishing, I'd probably share a little bit of info, but that does not go out saying that I would probably hit him with a water balloon passing by if I saw his spot, or something like maybe shake up some Cokes before I put in his cooler. Something along those lines. I'm sure that's not out of the question.
Exactly. There's been a few, spatty spats here and there, but, we have a great family brother relationship that fishing or money or nothing like that could interfere with.
Well, a question here from Brad, and I know we don't want to talk. We'll warn everybody, we're not going to give away too many secrets here on Grand because we don't know who's all listening. But if the water stays, Brad's asking if the water stays dirty at Grand, is it going to take away the jerkbait bite? And do you think that's going to open it up for the rest of the field? And he did make a note that apparently Brad's stalking you because he was privileged enough to watch you in Drowning Creek on the 2013 Classic. So I think he's following you around. So he might.
He saw me do what at the Classic?
He was privileged enough to watch you in Drowning Creek, he says, in 2013.
Oh, yeah. What creek could that be, No, one of the things with dirty waters is fish they have a tendency to push up shallow. They got to see their bait to eat their bait, I think. That's my opinion on it. I don't think it'll totally take the jerkbait bite out, but I don't think it's going to be as strong. I don't think it's going to be a reliable, bite. I think you're going to have to really switch it up. You might get 2 or 3 bites on a jerkbait that you weigh in, and the other 2 or 3 might come on a square bill and, 3 foot of water. You just never know. And clarity, of course, it really depends. I know here on Gunnersville, we have 3 or 4 of our creeks are just completely, mud, but yet the river's just crystal clear. So, there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I think you'll have clearing in water area, in some of these areas, as long as there's no big rains like we've had. I mean, yeah, those were amazing rains that flooded Gunnersville, flooded, so many places in the central, of the U.S. that a lot of it's dirty, but those fish will get accustomed to it, and they're still there, and they'll bite. You're just going to have to figure it out. And the jerkbait, this might have to throw something a little brighter. You never know.
Now, we've got one that says, I always win at pre-fishing. This is from Carl, and tend to get a little brain dead come tournament day. What's the best way to tune your brain to get the mind where it needs to be once tournament day hits?
Let the fish tell you what they want and where they went and how they want it. That's one of the biggest things, I fished, I'm trying to think of a tournament here recently that I had that happen, and I just thought I was just going to blast them. And while I was, just recently on Toho down at the Southern Open, I had some good wakes and where I thought, I was going to catch a lot of fish. In fact, I went in there and I was actually throwing a double horse, and I made 5 casts and caught a 2-pounder, a 2-pounder, a 2-pounder, a 2.5, and like a 3 3.25, and 5 casts in a row. And I'm going, man, there's a lot of fish there because the water was still cold, and I was trying to find a group of bigger fish. And I went kind of past that spot and started throwing the new frantic frog through the lily pads and had, 5 or 6 really good bites. Well, I went there the first day of the tournament, and I'll be honest with you, I never had a bite. And I slowed down, I flipped, I pitched, I did everything. They just weren't there. They just moved, And that's one thing. And then so that's why you always need to have a backup spot. I get that question a lot. And when you're fishing, on spots that you go to on tournament day and you don't catch any fish, you need to have another spot you can go to.
Now, you mentioned on the jerkbait. Mike wants to know, you do change the hooks on your jerkbait to a stronger or different style hook, like a longer shaft hook, or?
Yeah, with this Lucky Strike jerkbait right here, these hooks are absolutely perfect on this jerkbait. Here's the thing. They will bend. They will bend because they're light wire. I like to replace mine with like number 6 Trocar. They're very sharp. You're throwing 10-pound string line. I throw mine on a 6.6 with a I think this is a 5-4 or a 6.3 gear ratio, because when they got that cold water, you don't want to be that fast. You want that bait suspended. You want it sitting down there. You want to make them bite it. So, it's 10-pound fluorocarbon because it sinks. Stren fluorocarbon, 6.6 carbon light rod and reel with a 6.3 or 5.3 gear ratio, just depending on it. And, really soft tip, because the soft tip makes a big difference in the feel of that bite and in the action of your bait. So, it's kind of finesse jerkbait fishing, I guess. But Yeah, the hooks, you know, that come out of the package are great on these things, but you know, when you're fishing for $100,000 or $300,000 in the Classic, you know, you want the sharpest, best hooks you got on that thing, and you know, Trocars with, you know, I love to put on there.
Now, Joe wants to know, do you use a Hydra wave, and if so, how often at all?
Yeah, the Hydra wave is something that, you know, and it's tied directly in with the jerkbait. And the reason I say that, because I was fishing, I want to say Bull Shoals for the first time, and I saw, you know, a couple of fish, you know, look like shad popping up there, and I kind of stayed off of the drop, and I was throwing that jerkbait, and I wasn't getting any bites, you know, and I'm not kidding you. I turned the Hydra wave on, and I kept fishing, and I started to see the shad push out in front of me a little bit more. And I kept fishing, and I actually had more bites, not more catches, more bites closer to the trolling motor than I did, you know, on the long cast. So, you know, coincidence to me was, hey, the Hydra wave works.
Matt wants to know, how long does it take you to get confidence in a new bait? Now, obviously, swim baits, we know we're working on years to get confidence on that one right now.
Yeah. Right?
So how long will you try a new bait, Chris, before you moving on, you know, to what you have more confidence in?
Well, it's like the drop dead crawl. You know, this is a bait we designed, you know, with the little swim tails on it, you know, a crawl bait. You got to catch fish on it. You know, no matter what you do. I mean, you know, you can throw a swim bait, and it's the most beautiful thing in the water. I mean, every time I throw it, especially the big $149 ones from California, you know, you zing that thing way out there and you're bringing it through that clear water and you can see it way out there. Like, man, why did nothing bite that on that cast, you know, or the next cast or the next cast? So I put it up. So, you know, one of the biggest things is make sure you understand the bait, but also make sure that you catch fish on it, because if you use it in a tournament situation, if you ain't got confidence in your bait, you're not going to catch anything on it.
All right, we're going to hit a few more questions here. It's about a half hour in, and we don't want to kill your voice too bad, so we'll do a few more here. Let's see. We've got one here from Carl. Says he finds that fish hold tighter to cover in turbid water around southeast Texas. Is that the same on lakes and other places, do you find?
He finds fish that hold closer to cover in what kind of conditions?
In more rapid, fast-moving water.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It creates an eddy, you know, and it creates an ambush point. And that's what bass are always after, especially when they're feeding. They want to ambush their prey. You know, that's why they hide in grass pockets. And when you flip on their head, I mean, it's a sudden pow, you know, they just grab it so fast. Same thing with a jig by a log. You know, if you got the current coming down, pitch over behind that log and, man, they'll smoke it. So dirtier water and faster current is going to position. What it does is it positions the fish to, you know, you'll kind of get dialed in exactly where they're at, and then you can go over the entire lake and catch fish like that.
Now on your reels, Chris, you'd mentioned, you know, I think it was a 6.3 or 6.3. So do you use any ultra low ratio reels for big deep cranks? You know, like a 3.8, like on the old Shimanos and so forth.
Well, yeah, you know, growing up in 5 foot of water or less down there in Florida, I didn't throw a lot of deep crankbaits, but I've learned to crank like Kentucky Lake and Guntersville. So, you know, the 5.3 to 1, 5.3 3 to 1, you know, that's a low enough gear ratio for me. I don't get into the 30 or 40 foot crankbaits bite. It's tough for me. And that's kind of where I go back to fishing my strengths, you know. I mean, you can always catch fish anywhere from, you know, half a foot of water to 50 foot of water. It just depends on where you think you're going to be able to succeed. And Greg Hackney said it to me, I think, probably better than ever. Pick your battles, you know, and try to win the war. You know, you got two things, I'm just sitting here saying, you know, California Lake Castaic, throwing a Castaic swim bait, you know, or catching a bunch of fish on a drop shot. I'm probably going to throw the drop shot until I get a nice limit of fish when these guys are blasting them on the swim bait that know how to throw it. So that's not my cup of tea, but this one is. So, you just have to play your odds and, figure out what's going to give you the best shot, because your ultimate goal, and that's one thing that, coming into the next 2 weeks and get ready to go to the Classic, your ultimate goal is to make the Bassmaster Classic. I mean, any angler's goal. I mean, to win it is just dream. I mean, it's just unbelievable. To make it is the dream that I think I've always had, and so many young anglers and old anglers. I mean, everybody, man, to have a chance to fish the Bassmaster Classic is something. So you have to, put yourself in position to do that, and then winning it is something you just can't imagine.
Oh, you and I are going to have to bug Velvic or something to have him teach us how to throw swim baits, because I'm with you, man. I get about 15, 20 minutes, I'm done. I'm grabbing anything else but it. I can't do it with swim baits either, but like you said, I know guys freaking mash them on them. But
yeah, I mean, why didn't 3 10-pounders eat that thing on the way back? You know what I mean?
So Eric says he fishes a lot on Lake Murray in South Carolina. He says the fish there seem not to stage and go right to the bank. Do you see this on other lakes this time of year? Yeah, well, the thing with Lake Murray, if I'm not mistaken, that doesn't have a lot of structure on that lake, correct? Let's see if he replies. Eric, go ahead and reply. We're going to come back to you on that one. Related to that, Chris, how far, Sean wants to know, how far will bass travel to get to a spawning area? Until they find one. They're gonna go, and it's kind of like a woman having a baby, she's gonna get to the hospital or have that baby one way or the other. They will find a place to to lay their eggs. Whether, I've seen, and this is the crazy thing, Smith Lake, West Virginia, I've seen fish spawn on top of a jet ski, a jet ski lip that's under the water in 40 foot of water. You'll see 2 or 3 fish spawning on that thing. It's just the craziest thing in the world. Why are they not on the bank? Well, they don't need to. What they need is a hard surface, somewhere they can lay their eggs, and for the male to be able to protect them in the garden. So I mean, the fish they're gonna find a place to go and get rid of their eggs one way or the other, no matter a boat. I've seen them on the back of trim tabs, on the back of the trim tabs on the boat. I've seen fish spawning on there. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Now, what about Champlain? Have you ever fished Lake Champlain? And if you did, was it for largemouth or smallmouth? And do you have a preference? Oh, yeah. I loved Lake Champlain. Fishing, I was actually leading an Elite Series event one time in there. The water was flooded, and I was flipping into the arrowheads and cattails and lily pads, throwing a frog, catching giant fish. It was a blast. I absolutely had a blast fishing. And, the smallmouth there are big. Personally, you get on a stretch pitching a big jig, like when Denny Brower won that tournament. He was pitching a big, busted 23 pounds the last day. That's hard to beat. I mean, I don't care if you're in Florida or you're in New York or you're in California. Busting 23, 24 pounds, flipping cattails is phenomenal. Catching 4 to 5 pound fish on a drop shot is fun, but it's scary, because it takes you a lot longer to get them in. You're using a lot lighter line, and they jump 24 times, and they're strong. So tournament-wise, I'd rather pitch a jig in there and sling them in the boat. If I was out there having fun, I'd be out there throwing a drop shot, catching, 4 and 5 pound smallmouth. That makes sense. You get the little shaky hands when you're fighting them on the drop shot doing this. The drag zinging out there, and you're like, oh, please don't come off. All right, we got our last two. Eric responded back to us, and he said, you're right. There's not a whole lot of structure not much structure in a herring in the lake. So that goes back to his question of, do they go, he doesn't see him stage, they go straight to the bank. Do you see that on other lakes? Oh, yeah, they will stage out there. And those are the kind of lakes that are very tough to fish. Those are the kind of lakes where the Alabama rig has kind of shown what lakes as their potential really is. I look at Santee Cooper. I really put that kind of into perspective too, because they have structure out there, and those fish go out there where you can't get to them, or
and stuff like that. But they stage out in those trees. So it goes back to, Lake Murray. When those fish decide to go, they're going to go. And in the spring, that's when everybody fishes. Man, that lake probably on fire, catching giant fish, and it lasts for so long. And then it goes through the cycle of the shad spawn, and then from the shad spawn, the bass are eating those, and then in the summertime, they work their way out and, go out there, and you can catch them out there during the summer. And then they get towards the wintertime, and they just don't bite, and you got to wait for the spring to come back around. But you always want to check those secondary ledges on Lake Murray, from the spawning flat to that first drop to the major drop. That secondary drop, usually this time of year, as soon as you start to get a little bit of water warming, or even in the cold time, you can catch fish on a jerk bait out in that drop, because those fish are sitting out there. They still got to feed. So they'll come up and feed on there, and then they go back down. But when they decide to come up, one thing that's pretty amazing about bass is when they decide to come up, they're not going back. They're staying up for the most part.
And we'll do the last one here from Matt, and then we'll give your voice a rest for the evening, Chris. And that is that what is a good rod and reel setup that you like for flipping and pitching?
7-6. I've really changed that up, and we seem to be holding pretty good here. So if you got a couple more, I don't want to leave anybody hanging.
Okay.
A 7-6. I've kind of changed up a little bit. I use a 7-6 medium heavy carbon light rod, and I'll use the 6-4 gear ratio. I don't use the higher gear ratio for flipping. So I use the 6-4 gear ratio, and of course, 65-pound Stren braid is my go-to, flipping stick with an XPS ounce weight on it. The new Trocar flipping hook, not the heavy cover, because a lot of the times, just a good flipping hook, and with braid, you don't have to set the hook that hard. So, and then I'll put it on, of course, the drop dead crawl, and you can just cover so much water, and that's my favorite way to fish. And the medium heavy has really seemed to put more fish in the boat, and I think it's because you don't put as big as hole in their mouth with a heavy action rod.
Now, are you using any fluorocarbon leader with your jigs, or are you going straight to braid?
Man, I am a straight braid type of guy. The less knots for me, the better off I am. Turning 40, I'm 40 now, so my eyes are starting to go on me a little bit, so I don't like tying all them knots.
Come on, you're not hiding under your console and blast off doing this right under the light there?
Exactly.
So Victor's got one, which is when you start using a new bait and you fill your box with that style of bait, do you take out any other boxes or any baits out of your box, and you kind of just cram more in there because you know what you've got?
I think one of the biggest things is, you got to keep in your boat what you're confident in, what you know you can catch a fish on. When you get a new bait, buy one or two of them, and then, as long as you catch fish on it, and as long as you like throwing it and have fun with it and think you're going to catch fish, then you can always go back. They're always going to make more baits. So then you can go back and buy a couple more. Then if they really work, then you can do what my grandpa did and buy 350 double horses from Bass Pro.
And what knot are you usually tying with your braid?
That's one of the biggest things, when it comes to knots. On a jerkbait, I'm going to tie what they call a double cinch knot, and the one thing that does is it does not cinch the fluorocarbon, on the jerk, on the knot. And, I'll tie the same thing on a stick bait, say a double horse or a topwater bait that's got propellers on the front. I'm going to tie the same thing because it's going to keep your line straight. If you tie a Palmar knot, then that spinner will catch that line, and then it nicks your line. It gets caught around. So you want to tie an inline, just a straight, the way your line comes straight, and the knot peels it out, or cinches down to where it's straight as an arrow, and then you don't ever have those, problems with the nicks in the line. If I'm flipping braid, it's, or throwing a frog or anything like that with braided line, it's a double Palmar knot.
All right, Chris, I think we've pretty much, let me just check, but I think we've run through all of our questions for the evening. So what else, everybody that's still here is, actually, Chris, I should say still here. Actually, everybody that signed on is still here. So we actually did a pretty good job, I think, of answering questions and entertaining. We didn't lose anybody. So that's
all right.
Awesome. So we did good.
Well, I appreciate everybody, and, look forward to the Classic. And this is my first webinar, so I know the light's not right. I was sitting here talking to Paul, and I'm having to take the Tiffany lamp that my wife got, that if I broke that, I was going to be in a world of trouble. I took that off and turned that one off, and anyway, we got it, and look forward to doing more of these and, you know, being a little bit better, you know. Like Paul, look at him. He looks great, you know. I got a side shadow on my face and all that. We'll work it
well, you don't know how many hours it took me to set this lamp right up here in the desk and situate the cam and have perfect, because, you know, if I take my hat off, I'm going to blind everybody. Here, there you go.
There you go. How's that? I like it.
Awesome. No, you did awesome. Thanks, Chris. And I look forward to seeing you there Sunday night, because I know you're going to be fishing Sunday. So I look forward to joining you for a beer later with the Toasted Champions. And
ooh, boy, that you're giving chills thinking about it.
All right, man. Thanks for everything, Chris. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. If you do want to watch a recording of this to take some extra notes, it will be on Navionics' website under our webinar. Probably get posted up on Monday. So if there's anything you want to review, feel free to check back. And thanks for everybody for joining us, Chris. Appreciate all the insight, man. Thanks for taking time out tonight.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.